With regard to privacy law, I teach in the criminal law and procedure area, so in particular, um, with respect to technology and surveillance and how that impacts rights of privacy. Well, it's a great question. Privacy, the reason it's so complicated is because it's so very fundamental. In other words, we tend to think, as I was saying, as privacy is secrecy. What do I have to hide? What sort of things in my life do I not want other people to know about? But it turns out it's much more complicated than that. And I'll just use an analogy that actually a colleague of mine who's at this conference, Andy Taslitz, uses in his writing. But he comments on the fact that each of us actually has different masks that we wear. In other words, we have certain personalities that we share with certain different people in our lives. With a spouse or a significant intimate other, we share almost everything. With certain thoughts we only share with ourselves, other things we share with our parents, certain with children, certain with coworkers, etc. And the problem is that if that right and ability is taken away from you to control what information you share with different people, you actually have a very real harm to your personhood and to yourself, because we create these different identities. And it's not, some people almost sound like it's a subversive notion that you're not trying to hide, but it's different than that because you experiment with ideas in different people. So I know there's a lot going on in this, but the bottom line is that privacy is really fundamental and coherent into your identity and to your personhood. And privacy is what best gives you the ability, fortunately, in governments like the United States, where we've had relatively good privacy, to really develop as a full human being and realize your potential and your significance and become what you want to be. And you just cannot do that if you're not able to separate out these different regimes of information that different people have about you. Academics and scholars do have an impact on policy. I think sometimes, as I was saying, we could do better in terms of getting it down to a public level, but we do have an influence on policy. For instance, I'm currently serving as a reporter for an American Bar Association task force that drafts criminal justice standards, and our particular project right now is to draft standards regarding government access to data in the hands of third parties. So your bank records, your telephone records, your internet company records, all those things. If the government wants to get them, what process, if any, do they have to use? Do you get notice? And those kind of policies do make a difference, in other words. And they'll be adopted in different form, we hope by legislatures, by courts, and the like. Different projects have different success levels in that regard. But certainly, academics do play an important role. People to recognize the importance of their privacy, to remove the notion of secrecy. And importantly, as many people point out, I think a lot of people today think that security and privacy are opposites, if I could. So, and this is not my analogy, a very common analogy, but if you think of security and privacy as a unitary dial, so if you turn up that security, you have less privacy, and if you turn down the security, you get more privacy, meaning they're opposed. And that's actually not the case, and that's important for people to realize, is that if we have the correct kind of policies and smart policies and they're well thought out, you can have both security and privacy, and that's actually what makes for a healthy democratic state.